She was abandoned in a town that didn't even know her name. No husband, no home, no way back. But then she found him, a dying cowboy, bleeding, left alone in the desert. She saved his life, not knowing he owned the biggest ranch in the entire West. And her fate was about to change forever. The train did not arrive so much as it surrendered to the land, its wheels screaming in protest as it dragged itself into the forgotten station, where even time seemed reluctant to linger. The sky above was a dull, endless gray, and the wind moved like something alive, brushing dust across broken wood and rusted iron. From the last carriage stepped Ilara Vance. Her boots touched the ground, carefully as though she feared it might reject her entirely. She stood still for a moment, gripping the handle of her small, worn suitcase, her knuckles pale, her breath shallow as she looked around for the life she had been promised. There was nothing, no welcoming figure, no smiling husband, no carriage, no sign that anyone had been expecting her arrival. Only silence, a silence so complete it pressed against her chest. She swallowed hard and pulled the folded letter from her coat. The edges soft from being opened too many times. The ink slightly faded, but still clear enough to cut through her thoughts. She read it again, though she knew every word. The promise of marriage, the promise of belonging, the promise that she would no longer be alone. Signed by Corwin Hale, the name now felt like a cruel joke. A gust of wind snatched at her dress, and she shivered through the cold. She felt came from somewhere deeper than the air. She stepped forward, slowly dragging her suitcase across the uneven ground, each step uncertain, as if the land itself questioned her right to be there. A door creaked somewhere in the distance. A man glanced at her from across the road, then quickly turned away as though she carried misfortune. With her, another woman paused in her work, staring just long enough to judge before disappearing inside. Ilara lowered her gaze and kept walking. She had crossed miles to reach this place, endured hunger, loneliness and fear, clinging to a single fragile hope. And now that hope had dissolved into nothing, but still she walked, because stopping meant accepting that she had nowhere left to go. The town thinned quickly, buildings giving way to open land that stretched endlessly beneath the fading sky. The colors of sunset bled across the horizon, gold turning to amber, then to a deep aching red. And there at the edge of it all she saw him, a rider motionless against the vastness, his silhouette sharp and unmoving like part of the land itself. Rowan Cross, though she did not yet know his name, he had been watching her long before she noticed him, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. The way she moved, the way she carried herself, the exhaustion she tried to hide. He had seen many things in his life: loss, betrayal, death. But there was something about her that unsettled him. Not weakness, but persistence. A quiet refusal to disappear. He nudged his horse forward slowly each step, deliberate, closing the distance between them, until the silence became something shared. "You lost." His voice broke through the stillness, rough, low, unused. Ilara lifted her head, meeting his gaze, though she could barely see his eyes beneath the shadow of his hat. "I was supposed to be married here." The words felt strange, leaving her mouth as if they belonged to someone else. Rowan studied her for a long moment, the wind tugging at his coat, his expression unreadable, but his thoughts anything but calm. He knew that story. Not the details, but the ending. "He ain't coming." He said it plainly, without cruelty, but without softness either. Truth did not change based on how it was spoken. Ilara felt the weight of those words settle inside her, yet she did not break. She had done enough breaking already. "Then I suppose I have nowhere to go." Her voice was quiet, but steady. Rowan looked past her toward the empty town, then back at her again, something tight and uncomfortable forming in his chest. He could ride away. He should ride away. That was what he had trained himself to do. Avoid attachment, avoid complication, avoid anything that might crack the fragile control. he had built over his life. But he did not move. "You'll freeze out here tonight." He said it like a fact, not an offer. She did not argue, did not plead, did not even look at him with expectation, and that made it worse. He exhaled sharply, irritated at something he could not name. "Get on." She hesitated just for a moment, then stepped forward, placing her foot where he indicated, and climbing onto the horse behind him, her movements careful, respectful. The closeness was unfamiliar for both of them. They rode in silence, the rhythm of the horse steady beneath them, the land stretching wide and indifferent around them, the sky darkening into deep violet. Elara kept her hands close, not touching him, though she could feel the warmth of his back, the strength in his frame, the quiet tension that never seemed to leave him. Rowan was acutely aware of her presence. Every shift of weight, every breath, every unspoken thought. He did not like it. And yet he did not stop. When they reached the ranch, the moon had already risen, casting silver light across fields that seemed endless fences cutting across the land like lines. Drawn by careful hand buildings, stood strong, though time had worn at their edges. This was no small place. This was power. This was history. This was everything. But to Elara, it was simply a place to survive the night. Rowan dismounted first, then turned to help her down, his grip firm but brief. "You can stay in the guest room." He said it without ceremony. "Thank you." Her voice carried something he did not expect. Not relief, not desperation, but quiet dignity. He nodded once, then walked away before anything else could be said. Inside the house, shadows stretched long across wooden floors, the air heavy with memories that had no place in the present. Elara followed the direction she had been given, finding the room. Simple but clean, she set her suitcase down. Slowly, as if unsure she would be allowed to keep it there. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands resting in her lap, her mind racing with everything and nothing at once. This was not the life she had imagined, but it was still a life, and for now that would have to be enough. Outside, Rowan stood, alone, staring into the darkness, his jaw tight, his thoughts restless. He told himself this was temporary. Just one night. Just a stranger passing through. But deep down he knew. Nothing about this felt temporary. Morning arrived gently, sunlight spilling across the land. Like a quiet promise, the ranch awakened slowly, the sounds of work beginning to replace the silence of night. Elara rose early before anyone could question. Her presence before doubt could settle too deeply. She stepped outside, breathing in the crisp air, her eyes widening as she finally saw the land in full. It stretched farther than she had imagined, fields, rolling into the distance, fences, marking boundaries that seemed endless. This was not just a ranch. This was a kingdom, but it did not feel like one ruled with pride. It felt like something waiting. Without asking permission, she began to work. Small things at first, sweeping, cleaning, organizing. Movements driven not by obligation, but by instinct. She needed to prove she had value, even if no one demanded it. The workers noticed. Whispers followed her through the day, curious glances, questions left unspoken. Rowan noticed too, from a distance at first, watching her move through the space like she belonged. There, though she had every reason not to. She did not complain, did not ask for anything, did not try to gain favor. She simply existed and worked and endured. It unsettled him more than anything else could. Days turned into weeks, and something shifted in ways neither of them could fully understand. The ranch began to change. Laughter returned slowly at first, then, with more certainty, the tension that had gripped the land for so long began to loosen. And at the center of it all was Elara. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in fire and gold, Rowan found her standing by the fence, her gaze fixed on the horizon, as if searching for something beyond it. "You shouldn't stay here forever," he said, his voice quieter than usual. She smiled faintly, not looking at him. "Where would I go?" He had no answer. Silence settled between them, but it was no longer empty. It was something shared, something understood.
Why did you help me?
She asked finally. Rowan shifted his weight, his eyes scanning the land before returning to her. Because you looked like you needed it. It was only part of the truth. But it was all he could offer without unraveling. She nodded, accepting it without pushing further. And you, he said after a moment. Why did you come? She hesitated, her fingers tightening slightly against the wood of the fence. Because I believed someone wanted me. The simplicity of the answer struck him harder than any confession. Wanting someone had always been dangerous in his world. It led to loss, to betrayal, to pain. But standing there with her, he felt something different, something unfamiliar, something he did not know how to fight. Time moved forward, carrying them with it until the fragile peace they had built was tested. A rider arrived one afternoon, bringing news that cut through everything like a blade. Corwin Hale had never intended to marry her. He had sold the contract, abandoned the agreement, and vanished. She had not been chosen. She had been discarded. When Ilara heard the truth, it felt like the ground beneath her had opened again, swallowing everything. She had begun to rebuild. I have no right to be here, she said, her voice barely holding together. Rowan stood in front of her, his presence solid, unwavering. You got every right. No, you don't, Her eyes filled with pain she had tried so hard to bury. This isn't my home. He stepped closer, the distance between them disappearing. Then make it yours. She searched his face, expecting doubt, expecting hesitation, but found none. Why would you do that? Her voice broke slightly. Rowan took a breath, the kind that changes everything. Because I want you here. The words settled between them, heavy, real, undeniable. For the first time, Ilara allowed herself to believe, not in promises, but in choice. Tears fell freely, no longer held back by fear or pride. Rowan reached out, pulling her into an embrace that neither of them fully understood, but both needed. In that moment, something shifted permanently. Two broken lives no longer drifting, but beginning to anchor to each other. Seasons passed, the ranch flourished stronger than ever, but more importantly, so did they. Rowan learned to let go of the weight he had carried for so long. Ilara learned she was never something to be abandoned, and together they built something that did not rely on fragile words or uncertain promises, but on trust, on presence, on a quiet, unshakable love. The abandoned bride had found a place where she was not only allowed to stay, but chosen to remain, and the broken cowboy had discovered that even the deepest wounds could heal. When someone refused to walk away, on the largest ranch under an endless sky, where two lost souls finally found something worth holding on to.